Deadliest Catch's fan favorite Jake Anderson has won over viewers with his inspirational journey and unwavering will. Jake, who is one of the show's most likable characters, has had a tough road to success. Over the years, viewers have followed his ups and downs, but many are curious about the guy behind the scenes of the popular series and what he's up to now. How did this man become a mainstay on one of the most dramatic reality series on television? Let's delve into Jake Anderson's hidden hardships. Jake hails from a long line of fishermen in the Pacific Northwest. His family has been involved in the business for 3 generations. He was born on September 16, 1980. Jake grew up immersed in the stories, experiences, and knowledge of the risky and difficult crab fishing trade because of his family's tradition in the industry. Because of his deep affinity for the water, it was almost inevitable that he would wind up as a fisherman, braving the treacherous Alaskan waters in search of prized crabs. Joining the crew of the Northwestern in 2007 was a turning point in Jake's fishing career. Prominent among the fleet's crabbing vessels, he was brought on board as a greenhorn, a word for an apprentice or novice deckhand. Sig Hansen, a veteran fisherman known for keeping things tight but fruitful, was the skipper of the Northwestern at the time. Jake had to put in a lot of time and effort as a greenhorn to show the crew what he could do by working hard and learning the ropes. In addition to launching Jake into the television industry, his time spent working on board the Northwestern marked the beginning of his fishing career. In an episode called New Beginnings that aired on May 15, 2007, he made his television debut on the hit show Deadliest Catch. As they face the physical demands of their job with the terrible weather and stormy seas, the show chronicles the dramatic and often perilous life of crab fishermen. Jake stood out to audiences as an inspirational character because he worked hard and was honest about the obstacles he faced. As his career progressed, Jake became an integral part of Deadliest Catch, and viewers followed his story. When the Northwestern appointed Jake Anderson to deckmaster in 2012, it was a major step forward in his career. This position represented a considerable increase in responsibilities. The hard and dangerous labor of hauling in crab pots, processing the catch, and maintaining the equipment was Jake's responsibility as deck boss. He had to keep an eye on the deck crew to make sure they were doing their jobs right. It was a demanding role that called for seasoned leadership, composure under fire, and familiarity with the treacherous Bering Sea environment. 2 crucial maritime licenses were acquired by Jake later that year, marking yet another significant achievement. He became eligible to work as a mate or second-in-command on big commercial boats up to 1,600 tons after he earned his U.S. Coast Guard made 1,600-ton license. On top of that, he became a master 100-ton captain, which meant he could lead ships that were 100 tons or less in weight. A lot of time spent studying and working on the water led to these certificates. Additionally, they showcased Jake's determination to climb the corporate ladder and assume more responsibility in the fishing sector. Jake became the captain of the crab fishing vessel Saga in 2015, which was a daring move on his part. Even though it was a lifelong goal of Jake's, being the captain of his own boat presented him with tremendous difficulties. Not only did he have to steer the ship and keep everyone safe, but he also had to decide where to fish and how to navigate treacherous waters. Jake worked his way up the ladder and is now captain and co-owner of the Saga. The situation, however, changed dramatically after he received the boat's repossession notice. Disputes with his crewmate allegedly contributed to this legal setback, putting Jake in a difficult position. It was incredibly unfortunate that it happened at the same time that the Red King crab fishery reopened, a vital chance for crabbers to make a living. Due to the fishery's derby-style competition, where time is of the essence, Jake was put in a tough position when he lost access to the vessel. This effectively placed him at sea without a ship to command. Is Jake's time at sea coming to a close? In no way. Captain Sig Hansen, Jake's previous mentor, was there for Jake at this uncertain period. In 2007, Jake got his start in the industry thanks to Sig, the captain of the Northwestern, who had a significant impact on his career. Sig gave Jake a much-needed lifeline when he let him work aboard the Northwestern for a while. For Jake, this trip back to the Northwestern represented a complete circle, since he had started his career as a fisherman and television personality on that very ship. Although it was disheartening, it allowed him to reassess and plot his course of action. Jake wasted little time getting back up after this setback. A new fishing vessel, the Titan Explorer, signaled a new beginning for him, and he quickly embarked on it. With the purchase of the Titan Explorer and his appointment as captain, Jake threw himself wholeheartedly into his new endeavor. The fact that Jake was able to overcome adversity and become captain of the Titan Explorer was a watershed moment in his life. However, Jake's story does not conclude there. Jake Anderson has overcome tremendous odds and accomplished great things in his life. Jake had a tough time of it even before he became a professional fisherman and a Deadliest Catch celebrity. His early disappointment stemmed from his failure to achieve his goal of being a professional skateboarder. Jake wanted to make a living doing what he loved, skateboarding. But he was placed at a crossroads after a serious injury crushed that goal. Jake told the Skagit Valley Herald that he had given up on life during that period. After giving up on his dream, he felt disoriented and unsure of what to do next. He descended into a pit of despair and substance abuse as a result of his injuries, disappointment, and anguish. Jake sought solace in prescription drugs and methamphetamines in his early 20s, seeking to alleviate the physical and mental suffering he was experiencing. His difficulties only got worse because of his decisions, unfortunately. Jake decided to give skating another shot as he started to get well from his injuries. He was given the medication Adderall at this period. Medicine that is prescribed to patients with ADD/ADHD. Jake started using Adderall on a regular basis because he thought it would help him concentrate and become a better skateboarder. But the medicine backfired and hurt him instead of helping. His life went completely out of hand as he developed a severe addiction. Because of his addiction, he had trouble maintaining friendships and found it extremely difficult to secure permanent accommodation. For 2 years in his hometown of Anacortes, Washington, Jake Anderson was homeless due to the devastating effects of his addiction and loss. Jake was overwhelmed by emotions of humiliation and despair throughout this period. In looking back on that dark time, Jake Anderson said that he felt trapped with nowhere to turn. He described the shame he felt at 4 or 5 in the morning while aimlessly wandering the streets. Although these were some of Jake's lowest points, they also marked a turning point on the road to recovery. The choice to pursue sobriety and start new was taken by Jake shortly after his 24th birthday. He hoped that by working on a fishing boat in Alaska, he could find stability and purpose in life. Going fishing gave him an opportunity to put his problems in the past and concentrate on getting things done. It wasn't an easy road to rehabilitation, though. A relapse occurred for Jake. He enrolled in a structured treatment program after realizing he needed additional support. Reportedly sober since 2010, Jake overcame his addiction with the help of others and his own willpower. Not only did Jake's dedication to sobriety change his life, but it also served as an inspiration to others who were going through tough times. His book, Relapse, published in 2014, told his inspiring journey. Coventry House Publishing released his autobiography on April 29, 2014, detailing his struggles with addiction, homelessness, and, ultimately, redemption. Among the most heartbreaking occasions was when Jake's older sister, Chelsea Anderson, passed away. This tragic incident occurred while Jake was a cast member on Deadliest Catch. Being recorded on the reality show, it was a really moving and memorable event. Bitter Tears, an episode from Season 5, takes place while Jake is working offshore, hundreds of miles from his hometown of Anacortes, Washington. He got terrible news while fighting the harsh Bering Sea conditions. Serious health difficulties had hurried his sister Chelsea to a medical institution. In February 2009, Chelsea tragically died as a result of pneumonia-related complications. Jake was visibly distraught and hurt at hearing the news, and the audience could feel his anguish and sorrow as well. An illness-plagued life came to a close with Chelsea's dying. She struggled severely with her health from an early age on. Chelsea was found to have juvenile rheumatoid arthritis about the time she turned 2 years old. A long-term illness that produced widespread inflammation, hindered her physical growth, and caused excruciating joint agony. Chelsea was incredibly strong in the face of the hardships that came with living with this disability, which limited her mobility and caused her constant pain. How much Chelsea means to Jake is something he has already mentioned. He was deeply saddened by her passing because she had been an example to him via her strength in the face of her health problems. Being at sea during her dying moments just deepened Jake's anguish. He couldn't be there for her or his family at this tragic time. The tragedy had a profound impact on Jake, but it also played a role in shaping his identity through his story. Jake is shaped by Chelsea's memory even as he faces the difficulties of life and work on the Bering Sea. Jake Anderson endured a second devastating and unexplained family tragedy following the death of his sister. Keith Anderson, Jake's father, disappeared under mysterious circumstances in January of 2010. His family was distraught and desperately sought answers. Adding to the immense sadness he was already experiencing, this second devastating loss rocked Jake and his loved ones to their very core. In Anacortes, Washington, Keith Anderson resided. House of the family. Keith informed his loved ones the day he vanished that he was going to a friend's house in Arlington, a town some 40 miles away. Reports indicate that he had been battling depression and left with very little money. Nothing out of the ordinary should have been suspected as it was a regular journey. But Keith never came back, and the family was frightened. The hunt for Keith grew more desperate as the days passed into weeks. Despite the best efforts of the Anderson family and the authorities, they were unable to locate him. Then, a secluded logging road in Skagit County, Washington, was where Keith's truck was found, weeks after he vanished. Even while the car gave us a hint, it made us wonder more than it answered. There was no sign of Keith inside the deserted truck. With this new information, the mystery of his disappearance is even more convoluted. The situation was both puzzling and tragic. What may possibly have led to the dispersed placement of Keith's truck? Why had he left his house that day? What had transpired afterwards? Even though a lot of people looked for Keith, nobody found him, thus his family had no idea if he was alive or dead. Over 2 years have passed since Keith Anderson's abduction. Upon receiving answers, the Anderson family nevertheless endured the agonizing truth. An unidentified hiker was traversing the secluded region close to the spot where Keith's truck was discovered in Skagit County, Washington, in 2012. After the hiker discovered what seemed to be skeletal remains, the authorities wasted no time in responding. They determined that Keith Anderson was the rightful owner of the bones after conducting an inquiry. For the Andersons, the news was confirmation of what they already suspected, because they were now aware of his fate. However, it failed to address all the concerns regarding his arrival at that location. There was a bittersweet feeling of closure that this finding provided to Jake Anderson. Jake had been troubled by the mystery of his father's disappearance for more than 2 years, unable to rest until he knew what had become of him. Although it was devastating, Jake finally had an answer after finding his father's remains. Still, I wasn't entirely alleviated by that response. For Jake, the burden of loss was already heavy before this. The sudden and devastating deaths of his sister and father had been too much for him to bear. The truth of his father's death had finally hit Jake. While the finding was taking place, Jake was in the midst of recording his personal trip for Deadliest Catch. Jake stood near the spot where his father's truck had been recovered, dealing with his grief in one touching episode. This scene was heartbreaking since it revealed Jake's struggle to cope with his father's death. It was a moving scene because it revealed Jake's frailty and brought attention to the difficulties he was experiencing in his personal life away from the camera. When Keith Anderson passed away at the age of 62, it created an irreparable hole in Jake's life. Many viewers of Deadliest Catch witnessed this awful period in Jake's life as it was woven into his story. Jake Anderson suffered yet another tragic loss in Deadliest Catch episode 16, the 16th episode of season 20. This tragedy would affect him profoundly. Jake heard the terrible news about his buddy and fellow crew member Tom Brossart while filming aboard the Titan. Jenna, Jake's wife, called him and delivered the devastating news. Suddenly, at the age of 64, Tom had gone away. He was taken to the hospital in a hurry after suffering a heart attack at home in the Philippines. However, Tom was unsuccessful in escaping, despite everyone's best attempts. Jake was deeply affected by the news, and the emotional burden it carried was nearly overwhelming. Attempting to keep it together while choking back tears, he collapses back into his chair in the episode. As he thought about losing his best buddy and shipmate, his voice quivered. Outside of their time together on the yacht, Tom had a major impact on Jake's life. Collaboratively, they had repaired the Titan's bow and stern as well as its floors and lavatory. Tom had been there for the lads the whole way through this difficult but rewarding assignment. Jake and Tom have more in common than simply being pals. The partnership had been cultivated over many years of dedication, common ground, and admiration for one another. Everyone who knew Tom, even Jake, felt the emptiness that Tom's death created in their hearts. Jake spoke movingly on the significance of their time spent working together in the scene. Tom was obviously more than a buddy, he had been instrumental in Jake's path, guiding him through the worst times. The death of Tom served as a sobering reminder to Jake of the dangers and uncertainties of life on the high seas. Although fishing is an inherently risky profession, it also fosters strong relationships amongst individuals who depend on one another in ways beyond mere cooperation. Both Jake's professional and personal lives took a hit when he lost someone as important as Tom. You won't believe it. Nearly 2 months after the Deadliest Catch family suffered another painful death, Jake Anderson gets the terrible news about his friend Tom Brossart in a devastating episode. Another member of the cast, Nick Mavar, died at 59 years of age in early 2023. At first, it was said that he died of natural causes, but Anderson eventually revealed more information. A heart attack had befallen Mavar, Jake's uncle, after he had fallen from a dockside ladder. Since Nick Mavar was a dear friend of Jake's and a cherished teammate on Deadliest Catch, the crew was taken aback by the abruptness of the tragedy. For a long time, Mavar worked as a fisherman on the boats with Jake and others. In December 2020, Mavar had a major health scare, which ended his voyage on Deadliest Catch. A ruptured appendix, a potentially fatal illness that demands rapid medical treatment, befell Mavar on his voyage to the Bering Sea. The shocking and distressing incident was shown in one of his last episodes, which brought a surprising twist to the plot. He was in dire need of assistance, so the crew set out to provide it. Regrettably, Mavar's health problems persisted beyond that point. During the COVID-19 epidemic, he asserted that he was delayed in obtaining the required medical treatment following the rupture of his appendix. He said the pandemic's constraints and turmoil made it hard to receive medical treatment quickly, which caused the delays. After his incident, Mavar accuses Captain Sig Hansen and his wife June of failing to ensure he received the treatment he needed promptly enough in a lawsuit he filed after the fact. For his pain and suffering during the medical emergency and the delay in receiving treatment, Mavar requested $1 million in damages in the complaint. The lawsuit was a watershed moment for Deadliest Catch since it featured a major player from the show and brought attention to the challenges the crew encountered in operating in such a dangerous setting. The allegations were grave and prompted viewers to wonder how the show's crew members were helped to maintain a healthy lifestyle while engaged in a potentially hazardous job. Jake posted an homage to Mavar on social media only 2 days after he died away. Jake posted a poem he had written about his late uncle, whom he had affectionately called Uncle Nicky, on his Facebook page. The poem was an emotional tribute to his uncle. The robust, honorable, and vibrant guy that Mavar had been was encapsulated in the poem's lines, which conveyed Jake's profound respect for him. The loss of Jake's sister, father, uncle, and best friend was devastating, but he found ways to commemorate their memories and perpetuate their legacies aboard the ship.